Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm a bit nervous because I just half an hour ago started preparing this introductory welcoming word here at the Goethe-Institut. I wasn't sure that I was supposed to do that. When I was shaking Rozette Kats' hands, they were cold. That's because I'm nervous. Dear guests, welcome here at the Goethe-Institut Amsterdam. For those who are here for the first time, the Goethe-Institut is a globally active cultural institute of the Federal Republic of Germany. We promote the knowledge of the German language abroad and foster international cultural cooperation. Here in the Netherlands, we support and promote cultural exchange and dialogue. We deal with topics such as post-colonialism, feminism, anti-discrimination, and ecological matters, for example, and do so by hosting literature events, movie screenings. We organize panel discussions about society, history, and philosophy, and more. For more information, you can about our event, you can sign up to our newsletter via our website, which is usually on goethe.be/Netherlands or Nederland. Today in particular, I'm welcoming you to a panel about the atrocities that the Jewish people, the Sinti and Roma, a lot of other people, and in particular queer people today, have experienced during the Holocaust and the necessity of remembering. I'm very happy the Anne Frank Youth Network contacted us a few weeks ago and prepared this panel on their own account in the most professional way possible. Thank you guys. Remembering. Remembering helps people engage with specific matter sympathetically, so that energy can be accumulated and transformed into action. Remembering the violence queer people have experienced during the Holocaust will make us understand what it means to be queer today. Saying, I am queer and I'm not hiding, took me a while, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room. Queer lives all over the world are still at risk, are persecuted, in some countries even sentenced to death. But violence against queer people does not only happen far away, it's also present in this very city. Homophobia has a long history, and we can only set an end to it if stories are retold and heard so that allies too can raise their voices for the weak. Thank you all for being here today. And here's to Rachel and Daniel.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here with us today, and welcome. Also to those who are joining online from all around the world. We are extremely happy to be here and share this event with all of you. Before we start with the actual event, I would like to give a big thank you to the Goethe-Institut for lending us the space and helping us organize the event. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rachel, and I'm a volunteer at the Educational Department of the Anne Frank House. I'm going to be co-hosting today's event with my colleague Daniel. For those joining online, your moderator is going to be Jan, who's also a volunteer at the Anne Frank House. And you can speak to him through the chat if you have any technical difficulties and you need to turn on the camera or the microphone. Also, please know that the online stream is going to be recorded. Many of you have read Anne Frank's diary or may know the museum, but maybe you didn't know about all the educational work we do in order to spread her message and raise awareness about the dangers of discrimination. One of these amazing educational projects we work with is the Anne Frank Youth Network, which is an international network of committed young people who are inspired by the diary of Anne Frank and her life story and would like to contribute to the educational mission of the Anne Frank House. All activities aim to raise awareness and reflection, increase active citizenship, foster dialogue and democratic values today. Another project is Stories That Move, which is a tool for teachers and educators to address topics of diversity and discrimination in their classroom. This toolbox is based on young people's experiences. You will be able to find more about these educational projects later and also on our website. In relation to this project, we wanted to create this panel discussion tonight as a follow-up to the Holocaust Remembrance Day, which took place last week the 27th of January. There was an official commemoration at the German Parliament, and one of our guests, Rozette Kats, was the speaker there. This year, the event has a major significance since it was the first time that queer victims of the Holocaust were officially commemorated. Another of our guests, Lutz van Dijk, is one of the main reasons we are here now. He has been fighting for the official recognition of queer Holocaust victims for years. Let me introduce our panelists today, although I am sure they will later explain some more about themselves. Rozette Kats is a Holocaust survivor, and she shares her story with young people to encourage them to be themselves. Amjad Almatni is from Syria, but he has been living in the Netherlands for 4 years. He participated in the Younger team with his Dutch branch of the Anne Youth Network, and last year he won the Young Amsterdam Award for Social Engagement. Mees writes and thinks about their experience as a non-binary person. Since participating in the Anne Frank Younger team, they have learned that historical context is extremely important with this subject. And Dr. Lutz van Dijk is an historian, educator, and author. And in 2001, he co-founded Goethe-Institut, I hope I said that well, a children's home in Cape Town, South Africa, which cares for children with HIV and AIDS. Now, I would like to call on stage my colleague Daniel, who will start this panel discussion with some questions for guests. Thank you.
Like Sean already introduced me, I'm Daniel, also one of the volunteers at the Anne Frank House at the moment. And I'm very happy to see you all here in this afternoon with us. So many of you showed up and so many people online, and we're really happy to share this moment with you guys, but also with our audience. And yeah, I would say let's jump right into it. So at first, we want to give each and every one of you a few minutes to introduce yourself and just tell us what brings you here tonight with us. Maybe we should just go that way, that round. So that would you like to start?
Well, I don't have to give my name, Rozette. You know it already. Yeah, what is most in my head at the moment, that is the 27th of this month. No, of last month. When I had the honor to speak in Berlin, in the Bundestag. Something I never could ever have thought it before, because yeah, a woman house. I'm still in the Dutch modes. A woman from Amsterdam, Jewish, at a place where Hitler has stood. That's in short what takes my breath all the time. So I have to think now why I am here. Well, because I am really very much in favor of the fight my friend Lutz in the first place for me, but all the others for me with whom he was fighting, for recognition of the fact of themselves as persons, as victims, as badly treated people. Only that, because all of us are people. We all need the same thing after we got birth, got life. And so I could really not think of any other answer after I was asked to cooperate. Then yes, very, very much. Yeah, is that enough?
Yeah, my name is Mees. I'm a student from Leeuwarden. I study popular culture there. Yeah, I write poetry and spoken word pieces and some songs too. And they're mostly about my experience as a non-binary person. I try to make them very light, sometimes a bit funny, to kind of take away this taboo subject that they're hard things to talk about when it's just life and it's my daily life. So yeah, I try to make it as natural as possible, I guess. Yeah, and why I'm here is because I also participated in the Anne Frank youth team, or the jongeren team, the Dutch branch, as Rachel put it. And yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. I experienced for the first time what it's like to know about the history of minorities and the subjects that I've been taught about in school, like the Second World War. And then suddenly they became tangible. I think that's the right word. And I could picture, or not only picture people who went through those stories that I learned about, but also I saw them in real life. And that made the story so much more alive in my head. So that's why I find it very important to talk about the history of queer people and queer liberation and emancipation. And yeah, that's why I think it should never be forgotten where we've come from. And I think that right now I didn't learn about queer people in concentration camps or anything. It's kind of new to me. I knew about the pink triangle, but yeah, I just wanted to learn more. And I think the best way to do that is by sharing our stories. So that's why I'm here.
So much. Thank you very much for the invitation. And Mees, while listening to you, I thought maybe at the end you share some of your art with us.
Maybe.
Let's get the audience enthusiastic about it. Yeah, my name is Lutz van Dijk, and I was born 67 years ago in Berlin. My first name is very German. My surname Van Dijk is very Dutch. My parents were this generation who was quite traumatized by Nazi times. Also, they grew up and they were born in Germany. Rozette knows my story. But they were 5 years old when Hitler came to power, and they were 16 years old when the war was over. My father, a young, confused soldier, my mom raped by Russian soldiers. And they never could speak with us children about this time. It was a mosaic which was created much later. Yes, and like you, Mees, I had many questions when I grew up unanswered. I don't want to bore you with my whole life, but I would like to start where my life started, so you can imagine where we are now. And one important period of my life I want to mention when I had the privilege to work at the Anne Frank House, and I see some of my colleagues here this evening. Wonderful to see you again. In the 1990s, so you see it's a long life, and that was a great time. Also in that time happened something where at least two, maybe more, are present who contributed to this. I don't know if you know that in 1998, Amsterdam hosted the second worldwide gay games. We were too stupid to call it gay and lesbian and non-binary games because the language developed with the time. LGBTIQ plus was not used at the time, but still we were very proud to invite many people, and Frank Stevens from Amnesty International is here. At the time, it was so dangerous that I remember also from Syria and from a number of other countries where it's still dangerous, were invited with support of the Dutch Foreign Ministry. And I remember that one of our friends was arrested on his way back to Iran and Tehran. So I choose in my life to find answers to the many questions I have. And on this wonderful road, I met, and I'm allowed to say that 40 years ago, because we are still young, Rozette, who accompanied a very impressive person at the time, a Dutch lady who was not Jewish, but who was taking part in resistance and helped Jewish children to go into hiding. A story which is very close to your own story, and I hope you will talk later about it. And there were two events which the past 15-20 years where I was very much aiming for with a number of good friends and and colleagues. The one was that in the German parliament since 1996, the event of 27th of January, International Holocaust Day since 2005, was commemorated mostly and rightly so for Jewish people to remember. But there were also so-called forgotten victim groups like handicapped people in the euthanasia program, like Roma and Sinti and others who were commemorated. But our wish to commemorate also sexual minorities was refused over a long time. We speak maybe later about this. And it was a huge joy that this year, or it was almost a year ago, that we had good signs from the newly elected government in Germany that they might consider our proposals. And we had a year of, I must say, excellent cooperation and communication in preparing this event in a way not to exclude any of the sexual and gender minorities. It was a learning curve for all of us, and maybe later I can explain to you why the program, this 1 hour, only 60 minutes. I tell you, I never thought that 60 minutes are so short when you want to tell so many stories. But we all agreed from quite the beginning that it should start by building a link to this Day of Holocaust commemoration. And in the group of friends in my life was that there was you. And there was no doubt when I introduced you to the preparatory panel in Germany that they were very interested. Some were hesitant because they thought it might offend others, but I felt no. We must work together, and it's so important. Build not only bridges, but to show they exist. And we are an example of such a bridge. In Rosette's speech, I tried to convince your preparatory group to show the speech again, but I agree with you. It was not only in German, that would have been not the problem, but the translation was not so well done, so it's fine. And the real Rosette, of course, can't be replaced by anything else. It was one thing. In the last week, yeah, we spent almost day and night. A friend was laughing, nights too. I said, yes, almost a night too. And we might speak later more about this. The other event is still not solved, and that's why I put this book in my hands. I don't know, I don't need to say anything about the official name, State Museum Auschwitz, the memorial site of Auschwitz. You all know that we have a nationalistic government in Poland, and it seems to be extremely more difficult since that to have any commemoration of sexual minorities, especially gay men who were murdered there. It's a long struggle going on for years and years and years. I was in 2017 allowed to give the first workshop to the around 70 guides who are employed to guide tours for visitors in Auschwitz. But it's still a painful experience that to the day of today, there's not one sign of memory for those who had been murdered, for example, because of paragraph 175, this gay man. So this struggle goes on, and why I show you this book is for two reasons. One, it was a strong cooperation between German and Polish historians. That was our idea. Never German or Dutch historians would go to Poland and say, we have an idea. It could only work if we work together with our Polish colleagues. And we could found a strong group of recognized, internationally recognized professors of history who supported and who are supporting us in that aim. And to our huge surprise, one publisher in Poland, in Warsaw, has decided 2 years ago to publish this book also in Poland, which of course created a huge provocation. But this is still going on, and now I finish, and sorry for the long introduction. My next answer will be shorter, is that maybe, just, I'm a dreamer, that maybe in a few years' time we meet again, and Rosette, you will be there again, and some of our Polish friends, and report from the first commemoration in Auschwitz. I thank you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Wow, first of all, I want to say what an honor for me to be with you all here. Hi everyone, my name is Amjad. I'm 21, I'll be tomorrow 22.
Stay until midnight.
I was born in Syria and I grew up in Syria and Russia. And 4 years ago, I refused the Netherlands with my father. And now I'm studying nursing and I work with refugee students in Amsterdam. Besides all that, I'm an activist. So activism is a huge, important part of my life. A lot of friends ask me always, you are now in a safe country. You have the rights that you wanted your whole life in Syria or Russia. Why are you still being so active? And I always answer them that this is actually the reason why I'm an activist, because I'm now in a free place, in a safe place where I can be loved. And so yeah, why don't I do it? And 2 years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to the Anna Frank network. And back then I didn't know who Anna Frank was. And when I got accepted, I searched Anna Frank. And I was just so shocked that I was 19 years old, I lived 19 years old on this planet, and I've never learned about Anna Frank or the Second World War. And then I read the book, and it was just so empowering. During my time with the Anna Frank network and with all the young people, together with 2 amazing young people and them sitting there, we created a platform for young activists. And a couple of months later, I got nominated for the Young Amsterdam Awards, and the platform was also a huge, played a huge role in me being nominated. And this is all about myself and what brought me here today.
Thank you so much. It's really inspiring. You actually won the award, didn't you?
Yeah.
I think that's worth an applause. Really happy to have you here. It's been inspiring to listen to you. You mentioned that Rozette and you have a past of 40 years. Is that correct? I think that some of the people here in the audience know you personally, but and your story, which you're trying to share, that's what you do. But maybe some people, especially online, don't know you too well. Would you share your story with us?
How much time do I have?
Briefly.
Well, I tried to. Well, born 1942, 80 years old. And almost as soon after I was born, my parents and me went into hiding because we were Jewish. And well, the star was already obligated, mandatory. I need sometimes help. And so we went into hiding, but we couldn't stay all the time at one place. So we traveled throughout our country and ended in 1943 in Amsterdam, back in Amsterdam, where I was born, at a place where I couldn't stay because the woman who gave shelter was not married. So it was not safe enough for her to have a child like me in her house. I was 8 months old at that time. And that's why they had to find another place for me alone. And I was brought the 17th of February, 1943, to what later became my foster parents. They gave me another name because Rozette is a Jewish name, so that must be that should be too dangerous. And they promised before they went away, my parents. They made an appointment that if they should not come back to get me, that they would try to meet me and raise me like I was their only child. And that was what happened. The parents didn't come back because they were betrayed. Shortly after, they brought me away and were brought into Westerbork. You don't need an explanation of that word. Where, and that was something I found out very late in my life, my mother gave birth to my baby brother. And 3 months later, all the three of them were deported to Auschwitz, where my mother and my baby brother were killed the same evening. And my father had to work as a slave 4 months, and then he was killed or dead, or I don't know how, but anyway, murdered, like it was planned. So I stayed where I was, and I grew up as a happy, gay little girl. I have got pictures from that time, which show a very lovely, laughing child. And I didn't know anything else, but I was Rita van der Weg, and I lived with my papa and mama. But one evening, just before the evening before I should grow 6, because that day when you are 6 years old, you have to go to school. And that night before, my papa said to me, said, "You come onto my lap, I have to tell you something. You will be 6 years old tomorrow, and you know, we will celebrate and you go to school. But therefore, it's time that I tell you something. You must know that I'm not your father. Mommy is not your mother, and you are not Rita van der Weg. You've got another name. Your name is Rozette Kats." And of course, I didn't understand. And my first question was, why? And he said, "Yeah, it is really difficult to tell you this, but you had other parents, and there was a time in which people hunted on other people, on Jewish people. And your parents were Jews. So they had this, they were afraid that it should be very dangerous for you, and they didn't want that. And so they left you with mommy and me. And that is wise, because they aren't there anymore. But you are with us. We are now your papi and mommy. Don't be afraid. We will always take care of you. And we love you. And tomorrow, you are 6. We will make a party. You go into school. And from now, we don't have to speak about this anymore." And with this last sentence, he changed me into another girl. He had said, I forgot this very important sentence. He had said to me, "You have not to be afraid because you stay with us," and so on. But of course, I became very afraid, because if your parents are something of which you are dying, then who will tell you that you are not dying? And I became afraid, but I was so very much afraid that I didn't dare to speak about it. Moreover, he had told me, from now on, we don't have to speak. And I had interpreted this like a verbod. Sorry, a verbod. I was forbidden to, yeah, like he had said, you are forbidden to speak about it. That's how I had heard it. So there I was 6 years old with a huge geheim secret. Oh, I'm sorry, now I get nervous. And yeah, and that led to very many difficult, very difficult years. I created like a bucket inside of my body in which I put all things, words, ideas I couldn't cope with. And that was a lot. There were many things I couldn't cope with. Words like war, Jew. What was a Jew? I didn't understand, but I just knew that you would be killed for it. So nothing for me. And this bucket grew and grew and grew, became during years and years blacker, more black, and more filled and more heavy. And it was really very difficult for me. But no one, I think nobody in the world, have ever seen this, have ever noticed this, because at the same time, I acted like a professional actress or a chameleon. I adapted extremely at any situation. And what was so difficult for me, I was very afraid for everything. So I didn't say no, never. I said yes. I was the most adapted, the most lovely girl in the world. And every neighbor was jealous because his daughter was so perfect. I did all these things children don't like to do, like putting your own room in order, or making your bed, or taking your brother to school, because after the war, my foster parents became a child, my foster brother, up till now, my brother. And so I did all those things, and I never dared to show if I felt any feeling of madness or something. The contrary, I didn't show it. I was perfect in hiding all those things. Now, that is not very healthy for a girl to grow up. And although my life went on, and I worked, and I married, I got children, and I'm very glad I got them. But what I didn't get was my own identity. I didn't dare to say no, and I didn't dare to search to what border I could go, and where were the borders of other people. And I didn't dare to search that, to research. So I was nobody. And if you have no own identity, however can you make good choices in life? And that is where it is about life. You have to make choices every day. And in some situations, your choices are more important than in other situations. So it is easy to think of my choices. They were false all the time. So lots of things in my life went wrongly, were disasters, like my marriage, for instance. Although I am very happy that I did it and I have got two wonderful children, the marriage itself didn't. Yeah. So difficult. I never speak English. No, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And then in the 80s of the last century, there was something which made my bucket make too full. The last drop. And it means this image means that I got sick, really sick. Of course, my whole life was a sickness. But now I moest dat even instort? I collapsed, yes. And that was my saving, because now finally I went to a psychiatrist, and I found after a few the right one. And at least 5 years we spoke together, and I understood what was happened to me. And when you get this insight, you finally can work with yourself. And shortly after that period, I got the chance to visit, to attend a conference for formerly hidden children in the Netherlands, Jewish hidden children. And the combination of these two, first this psychiatrist and then this conference of 3 days, talking with people like me who had recognized every word I spoke and omgekeerd, and the way around, yes, made me getting my identity, taking it, and becoming finally Rozette Kats, the one whom I was meant to be, and who I never had dared to show, to come out. So this was really my coming out. And that is what connects us. I feel the same. I was always hidden, like you had to live hidden, in a hidden situation. I felt I did it myself, but well, that is what connects us really. And since then, I decided I never will do what other people want from me only. I will do what I want. And I am able to say no now. I showed it with the steps. But what I discovered in myself was not the need, but the capability of telling. And I felt the necessity of telling my personal story, and that's what I do since then, as openly as possible. And I have no shame. I tell what they want to hear in school classes and everywhere. Because I am convinced of the fact that only if you show yourself openly and honestly, it comes in. And my only goal is that people will develop empathy, because that is the basis of the capability to understand each other. That is, I always say, that is a verb, to understand. You must want to understand someone, and you are not able to do so without empathy. Now, that's why I do like I do, and the way I do it.
I know you were worried about taking up too much time, I guess, but I think me personally, and I think a lot of people in the audience agree, that it's a great privilege to have you here with us tonight. And there's a lot of specifically young people joining us online from literally all around the globe, and they might never ever get the chance to hear a survivor speaking. So thank you, Shirley. Speaking of young people, hearing this story and being active yourself in the queer activist community, do you feel like inspired by this, basically?
I feel actually very inspired. It's so powerful, everything you went through, and I have really literally no words to describe how I feel. So glad to be here with you. And it's so beautiful story because we were talking about how you were the whole time afraid your whole life, and then after you grow up and after the last drop, you decided to come out and to be this powerful person who are. It touched me actually personally, because I remember growing up in Syria and Russia, and both of them are countries where gay people are now accepted, and we were not allowed to speak up or exist even. And I was 13 years old when this last drop came, and I was 13 years old when I said I'm gonna speak up and come out of the closet. And I actually, to be honest, I regret that I did that because it scared me so much when I did it. And when I was 15 years old, I had to come out back to the closet and tell people that I became straight. And when I came to the Netherlands and I got the space and I started going also the psychologist who helped me process all these things that has happened to me. I came out on TV for thousands of people, so I can make sure in the future I can't believe it or I can't pretend anymore. So it was so powerful to hear your story. It's really so beautiful and really touching.
You must know that I am admiring you already. And we don't know each other only.
It hasn't been long since you graduated. You already mentioned that you lived in Russia and Syria before, and I assume that Holocaust education in general and this specific topic as well is not really tackled. What about that?
It's very sad actually that that in countries like Syria and Russia they talk about all the bad things that has happened during the Holocaust and the Second World War. And when I heard about the Anna Frank and about the Second World War 2 years ago, I was just felt that I've never read about it before, and I felt kind of ashamed, even though knowing that I had no, even though knowing that I've never heard about it my whole life, so I felt like I should have known about it. So I feel really so sad that in schools they never told us about it, and I think that they should definitely bring more awareness and talk about it.
Mees, you were here in the Netherlands. How have you perceived this matter?
I think in general, the Second World War is covered pretty well in primary school and secondary school too, but not all parts of it. For example, the Rozette story about being hidden away even after the war. I've never heard a story like that, even until now. So I think even when I'm interested in this topic, maybe it's partly my fault because I didn't dive into it too deep, but I think the effects of the war are not discussed as often as the war itself. And yeah, like you said, it's such a long period of time that its effects were still pressing on society, and I didn't know anything about it really. I just recently read that gay people who were in concentration camps were sent to prison after the war was over, and I don't know too much about that. Maybe I'm getting some things mixed up, but I never heard that, and when I did, I kind of felt, I don't know, like my idea of the war and the victory of the war, where the Allies and the Western world, or Germany, but the right side kind of won, and then I thought, okay, it's all okay, and we can continue living the way we're supposed to, and everyone could be themselves again. But now I'm hearing stories like this, and I've never heard about that. So I think that part is kind of hidden.
Can I react? I always show a lot of pictures when I go into classes. And I've got a picture of myself, I think 11 years old. And you see a bright, happy child, made a girl. And then I always say, what do you see? And then they say a bright, happy girl. And then I say, that's exactly what it's about. You can't look into a person. And that's what young people and everyone should know before judging, before having a meaning of you must try to get in touch and learn who is this other person. Because you can't see it outside. I was so perfect in hiding all those sad feelings, and that's what you perfectly said. Yes, pictures, a mirror. You're saying. Do you understand what I try to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. I think you brought up a very interesting topic. Lutz, it was your belief to mention Paragraph 175 already. Could you share your expertise? That I think that would answer Mees' question too, probably.
Well, first of all, I want to respond, Mees, that there's no reason to feel guilty or strange that you don't know all these details, because there are reasons that you have not this complete knowledge about what has happened. And this is not only true to Germany, where this paragraph 175 against gay men, not against lesbian or other sexual minorities, exclusively against gay men, was continuing after 1945. It was not over, you know. Never again was a hope many people had when they were freed from concentration camps. But this was not true to all groups who were imprisoned. It is correct to say, or to summarize, that this paragraph, even in the very extreme Nazi version, which was created in 1935, existed in Germany until 1969, which means when I was 14, you mentioned when you were 13, Ara, that when I was 14, I was actually a criminal still, because my desire, my wish, my dreams that I realized I was not dreaming about girls, but about other boys, was a crime. And there was no word for it when I was a child. There was no way to speak about it. In our family, one uncle committed suicide. And when my brother and I asked our children, why did this uncle commit suicide? He hanged himself. The only explanation was because he was so. And this word so was a cover up of his being gay. So nobody wanted to mention it openly. And only in 1969, this paragraph was made a bit more soft, which means that if two men had agreed to have sex, then it wasn't a crime anymore. But imagine it was until 1969. Then how long? I tried to make it short because I'm in danger to give another long answer now. We had in the commemoration hour in the German parliament, in the Bundestag, at the end, a speech of a man who was in 1964, 17 years old. And he was arrested because of paragraph 175. His friend at the time, 21, was sentenced to 1 year in prison. He himself could avoid prison sentence because he was young, but also he accepted so-called conversion therapy, which meant that he was given pictures and showed pictures and had to feel very guilty about his gay feelings. And he accepted that whole exercise because it spared him to go to prison. But when he reported that, he also told us, and that's true, that once he was sentenced by the paragraph 175, this only ended in Germany in 1994. But even worse, if you had been sentenced by this paragraph until 1945, it was until 2002 that you, on your register of being a criminal, was still on. And if you were sentenced after that until 1994, you were still a criminal until, now listen, 2017, 5 years ago. You were still a criminal, regarded criminal, when you were looking for work or whatever your criminal register showed you did a crime. Now, it was very important for us to explain this, that it was not ending in 1945, that we cannot speak only about the Nazi time, because that is the focus of this commemoration, the Bundestag. But once it went on and on and on, and two, it's still happening in even extreme worse situations in other countries. We have 70 countries with strong sentences, lifelong, partly against men, and 40 of those are also against lesbian women. And in 13 countries, 13 countries, according to Amnesty International, there's still a death sentence against people like me. And this is the one side, but I also wanted to add just one more aspect regarding the Netherlands. Of course, there were many, many reasons to celebrate after the war, those who had survived. And I remember that you said, Rozette, your foster parents couldn't celebrate so much because they had experienced so many atrocities and so many horrible things, and that's probably true to many others. But regarding our sexual minorities, it was years and years and years after the war that gay people were also not accepted. In the Netherlands, it was in 1964 that for the first time on Dutch TV, one man spoke out, Benno Kremselaar, very famous architect later. And it needed again years and years and years before a liberation movement was built and created. I looked up in the archives before I came to this evening about the situation, that when the first organization, COC, was founded in the Netherlands, all the members were not given their correct names when they registered because of fear that this might create discrimination or trouble in their life. So when we speak about sexual or gender minority, it's still a long history which needs to be discovered. And one of my dear colleagues, professor of history in Germany, Claudia Schoppmann, she wrote a book about lesbian women who are still not recognized widely as victims of Nazi time because there was no paragraph against them. She wrote a book which is called Time of Masks. She said, my sisters could only survive because they were very professional in having a masquerade, in hiding professionally their feelings. For now, I hope still that we get in conversation that with the audience, that maybe questions can be asked.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe one more thing, Amjad. We talked about version therapy, for example, which is quite a contemporary thing still today. It's, many countries, luckily or fortunately, are trying to abolish it quite apart, but there's still countries that carry things through. How do you think we as queer people, or as a society in general, where is the more room for our activism? What can we do more to keep this movement going?
I think we could do a lot, especially in countries such as Netherlands or Germany, where we are now in a safe space to fight more for our rights and speak up more. There are a lot of young queer people in so many different countries, like where I'm from, who are waiting for the very first gay man to come on TV, and they are still waiting. And I think we as queer people, we are in a safe space to speak up and to support them and to be their voice. And I think we should just keep fighting for them. I have the feeling that a lot of people here and a lot of queer people in the Western countries feel that the issues in other countries where gay rights are not accepted are issues that are so far away from them, and that's why they never do anything about it. But I think that we could use literally any voice. We should speak out. We should keep fighting for those who are not being able to fight for themselves, and we should be their voice as well.
Just to add one sentence, that it was a very special moment during this commemoration hour in the German parliament, when the president of the parliament greeted two refugees who had been recognized now as asylum seekers in Germany. one from Uganda and one from Afghanistan. They stood up and got applause from the audience. And for both of them, it meant that it was very special. I got it just yesterday. I got the information that now on social media in both countries, the photos of them standing in German parliament and saying thank you was sent to thousands of their friends and associates. But a very beautiful moment, and also for us in the so-called Western world. Many times Islam is blamed for certain fundamentalism. And it's very important to know that there also is very liberal and supportive Islam. For example, where I live now with my husband since 20 years in South Africa, we have a very progressive Islam, and we have full support of the Islamic communities in South Africa. There are many refugees from other African countries coming to Cape Town, for example, to look for refuge. But also on the other side, Uganda is a Christian country. And it is the parliament where most of the representatives are Christians who demand that the death penalty should be introduced against gay men and lesbian women in their country. So it's a very diverse picture, Mason. Don't give up to collect information and to speak to people. The picture will be never complete, and we grow while we are learning.
Thank you so much. Dialogue, so it's your turn to ask questions, also for time. And one more thing, maybe before that, personally, I think I noticed once or twice that it says we as queer people, and I don't know if my family is watching online and sending the link. However, I might have just came out to them. Who knows? I'm not saying that to make this about me, no, not at all. What I'm trying to say is that representation matters, and being in a room full of acceptance and this specific dialogue is what matters simply. So thank you.
Nothing else. We have to your question, and we're going to read them out loud. And please, when you have a question, say your name, where you're from, and please just your question. Thank you. Someone wants to start? Is it time? Yeah.
So my team from Rotterdam is asking, how can we tell also the positions of the pain victims so their stories will be remembered?
Which victims?
Pink victims, referring to lesbian people who were prosecuted during the same period of time.
I'm still not 100% sure. Can you repeat it one more time? How can we?
Yeah.
So it's been
Yeah.
big part of the paragraph, so I'm going to read out the whole thing. So the question starts, we don't talk a lot about the situation of the LGBTQ plus victims in the Netherlands, but there are a lot of stories like about the pink victims. Now there's the name of a doctor who was a Danish Nazi doctor in a concentration camp who experimented extensively with hormones and other experiments to treat homosexuality. After the war, the government knew who he was, so they sent him to South America. Lesbian women who got in the camps by his side got raped to make them straight. Also, after the war, the LGBTQ victims got out of the camp and sent to the mental hospitals to get treated until 1971 in the Netherlands. Nobody would like to talk about those pink victims in the Netherlands, so there are no stories in school or at any Holocaust or 4th May Remembrance Day. Only LGBTQ plus community is telling the stories. How can we tell also their positions of the pink victims so their stories will be remembered?
Okay, I give it a try. I try to understand what this person wanted to or said by pink prisoners. Probably it's related to the pink triangle, which men, not lesbian women, which men had to wear in concentration camps. And it's maybe important to add that when you had been sentenced during that time, during the Nazi time in Germany or in the occupied countries, because of paragraph 175, and you had survived your prison sentence, or it had been finished, then you could be still sent to concentration camp if you had been regarded as not behaving still properly. So it could be made into an eternal prison sentence. And as we know, more figures now, most of them did not survive because in the hierarchy of prisoners, they were on the lowest level. This was confirmed by many, many other groups of prisoners. Well, when the person who asked the question, forgive me that I didn't understand the name properly, when she or he asked about lesbian women, how were they discriminated against and how they were also sent, some of them, to concentration camps. There were other laws against them where they made, where they had been arrested for. For example, there was a word, we discussed it in Germany also, which was called asocial, means unsocial. You are not a social behaving person. But this was not only true towards lesbian women. You could also be arrested because of the laws according of being asocial. If you were begging on street, if you had no fixed address, if you were drunk, things like that. If you used social grants for private purposes or abused them. But lesbian women were partly arrested because of that. And the story we told in the German Bundestag on Friday, read by a famous actress, German actress, Maren Kreumann, that was based on a woman, a Jewish woman, who half of her family, her mother and her sister, were murdered because they were Jewish. But one German doctor in the concentration camp of Ravensbrück decided that her being a lesbian was even more punishable than to be a Jew. Please read all what I say, hear all what I say in quotation marks. And what happened was that she was, he had a few sessions with her, and at the end he decided her being a lesbian is not treatable. And the word not treatable meant a death sentence. She was sent to a so-called hospital, a Heilanstalt, who had also a section for euthanasia. And at the young age of 38, she was gassed in this concentration camp because of the lesbian and not even because of being Jewish. And her non-Jewish husband received 2 days later a letter in which was falsely written, your wife had succumbed to a heart disease. You can, on your own cost, ask for her ashes, and they will send to you by the hospital. So this all were life and life and life. And that is why only some of these stories are fully discovered recently. Because as long as my colleagues, the colleague historians, were looking for the definitions of the Nazis, they were led in wrong direction. This is still a very new, controversial item among us historians. I'm attacked regularly for it, and I'm proud of it. But this discussion is going on, that we have to, as I said earlier, demolish this masquerade of life which was created then. I'm so sorry, I'm still not sure if I got the question correctly, but some of it maybe.
Other questions?
For me, as in like,
Sorry, can you say first your name and where you're from?
I'm Joelle. I'm from the Netherlands, also part of Mees van Rijswijk from the Frank Youth Network. And I was wondering, as a non-binary person and also somebody of the LGBT community, do you think like to what you are, or how are you like, really to that question, if people like SPO, are you like this or that, or what is your reality? Do you think is like a question that people can ask? Would you rather tell you?
I think it's very important that people ask, because if you want to know something and you can't ask for it, then yeah, how can you figure it out? I think it's nowadays people assume that there are questions that you can't ask because they're like difficult topics, or it doesn't show respect when you ask people about certain topics. And I think it differs per person. Some people might be more comfortable talking about their own experience and others might not. But I think it's very important that we don't assume that everyone knows about a certain topic when in reality most people don't. And I think it's very important that you're allowed to ask anything. Yeah, and if you don't know something and you don't want to ask someone about it, then you can also Google it. But most people are just, it differs per person. So yeah, if you want to know about someone, then just go up and ask them. And I think also when you get a question like that and you might not be comfortable answering it right away, just try to look at the situation from the other person's perspective, because they are obviously not the same as you. So how could they understand things that you understand with their background? And everyone has their own kind of journey to learning things, and yeah, sometimes these don't line up perfectly with meeting people who you come across in your life. But yeah, you always have something to learn from each other, and it also goes the other way around. So yeah, I think it's very important that. Yeah.
Can I just add, Mees, I love your answer. And it deserves a big applause. One that Rozette and I decided just recently to work on a book for young children about her life, because one is that soon there will be no more people who tell their stories, and secondly, we need to learn a language, and you expressed it so well, to make something understandable, which is adequate for young children. And this book will be written in a way that young people interrogate you and will ask Rozette, why, and continuously. And I hope one day it will be also Dutch. The second aspect is that there is progress in certain countries and others not. But in some countries, yes. If I look back 30 years ago, when I published the first book for young readers, not for children, but for teenagers, about the topic of homosexuality, I remember that when I was visiting schools, and at the end of such a reading, everybody was polite and they listened kindly. I told them that I'm also gay. Majorities of young learners at school said to me or responded by saying, no, you don't look gay. That means the stereotyping of who does gay men look was so strong. Now there are different answers and responses, and that is positive. And that there are also critical questions. Wonderful. That's why we have to have a dialogue. And I agree with you, there's not one wrong question. Only if there's something negatively said in my face, it's fine. If it's said behind my back, I'm disappointed. That's the only point. Good, we can work together. Yeah. Intergenerational.
Chris, Amsterdam. when the news broke on the 27th, I was searching the internet for coverage, and the only thing that I found was from the Tagesschau, which was about 5 minutes. And was so curious, and it was, well, I didn't succeed in finding.
I give you more links.
Oh, but thank you so much. But I'm curious, what were the most? I understand that you were very important, paramount in preparing that hour you only have. What were the main aspects in that commemoration, and how did you make sure that all the colors of the rainbow were included, all the sexualities and genders?
Well, first, if you want to watch this 1 hour, my suggestion is Norbert, I will just provide you with a link to the German Bundestag, and via Goethe and Herder and Frank Institute, you can all watch it. So that gives me option to summarize my answer. Of course, we could not properly represent all colors of the rainbow, but we could give an idea, an imagination that there's much more than we know so far. And for example, as I indicated already, we had 4 main topics to indicate diversity, and 2 extras. I start with the 2 extras. This were that as guests of honors, queer refugees were invited and greeted. And I don't tell a secret that 24 hours before the commemoration started, there were strong objections against it by some parliamentarians who said, sorry, this is about the past, as we commemorate the bad Nazi times. So we don't want to, the whole diplomatic corps is invited. We don't want to have trouble with ambassadors from certain countries who say, you should have given us a warning what you are doing here with us. We thought we are talking about bad German times, and now you are talking about Uganda and Afghanistan and Syria, and no. And it was a decision by the parliament's president, Bärbel Baas, and I respect her deeply for that she decided, and I do it. And she stood up and greeted those personally, and the audience gave them a big round of applause. The other aspect was transgender people. We had, our wish was that the trans person also could speak out. And we had to accept, I mean, Rozette, even you got only 10 minutes, which you used so well. But we found a solution, which was, there's a famous, and you know her, Chris, a famous trans singer, Rozette. She's my age, and we remembered that we met 40 years ago in London when she was performing. Unfortunately, she was so drunk she didn't remember me. But I remembered her very well. And she sings, and this made her special, or makes her special. She sings songs from the 1920s, which were favorable songs to the, at the time we didn't have this word, but now I call it the queer community. Brecht's songs by Bertolt Brecht, by Friedrich Holländer, and she performed 2 songs with just the pianist and dressed very simple in black. And that was touching to many, many people who have never heard about what is this? This is a word for me not to. So this were the extras. But to the main aspects, it was Rozette speaking to build a bridge between the Jewish community and sexual and gender minorities, especially when you use the word coming out. I saw a big smile on many faces of my friends. And they could identify so well with your story that it makes sick to hide, that it makes sick and makes you, destroys your life if you live 2 identities and one is a lie. Everybody could identify with it. And even beyond these 2 groups, people have stories who can connect to that. Then we had, of course, the trouble that no people who had been persecuted during Nazi times are alive anymore. If you had been a teenager, even at that time, you would be 100-something now. There's nobody we knew even years ago. They all have died now. If we would have been more successful people like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we could have still made them speak in the parliament. So we invited 2 quite famous actors for the German audience, Yannick Schümann, a young person, openly gay, and Maren Kreumann, a bit older than me, an open lesbian actress. Everybody knows them in Germany, and they spoke in a very personal way towards two people who had been victims at the time. One, Karl Gorath, whose story is in many aspects very touching. He survived Auschwitz for one reason, among others, that he was able to change the pink triangle of the gay men into a red triangle of political prisoners, which gave him a bit more survival chances. But also his story was very special because after the war, even just 1 year after the war, in 1946, he was arrested again because of the same paragraph 175 and worse. When he went to court, the same judge greeted him with, judged him, sentenced him just a few years before with the words, "Ah, are you here again?" This was Karl Gorath, and I think his story was, oh yeah, and the Yannick Schumann, the young man, said in a very personal way in the speech, which we could prepare together, Karl, if you would be still alive, you would be with us now, and we hope that you find a little comfort that you are not forgotten, and those you loved in your time. There is more to say to that. You will see there's more horrible stories. He visited with us Auschwitz when he was 77 years old, because he wanted to know if two of the young Polish prisoners who he tried to protect during that time, if they also had survived or not. And when we were there in 1989, he was told, no, there was on a transportation list, the transport list to another camp, and no, they are probably dead, which was a lie, which we only discovered while doing research for this book 3 years ago. It was a lie because nobody of the official staff of Auschwitz wanted to deal with a gay prisoner. Just tell him they're dead, it's easy, then he will go. And he was so deeply shocked that he didn't stay with us the rest of the week. He left the next day, and he died 90 years old in 2003 with the knowledge his best friends during this time had been murdered too. The other story was about Mary Pena, and already indicated that she was gassed because of a lesbian in a so-called Heilanstalt in a hospital. A very special story too. And it ended by a speech by Klaus Schirdewan, who was sentenced by paragraph 175 in 1964 when he was 17 years old. And as I said before, his sentence was scrapped from the criminal register only 5 years ago. Until 5 years ago, when he was in his late 70s, he was still a criminal person. These 4 stories presented, plus the 2 other aspects, at least gave an idea of a huge diversity, and I think encouraged people, what Mees, you and I want to reach, to ask more questions. The media responses were overwhelmingly my whole life, and Chris, you know me from the Gay Games, I'm an email addict, but I couldn't respond to about 500 something emails following days. All huge media in Germany, TV, newspapers did report positively, and it was just exceptionally some politicians and some right-wing people who were critical and angry and so on. But as I said to you now, but that's also why we do it. So I don't see anything wrong in that. We have to have a respectful dialogue also with those who do not agree with us at all. This is why we are finally in public. This is why finally nobody can ignore us anymore. Yes. Chris, you will get more from me. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to hang out and chat with us. My question goes to Ms. Kats. I'm Dennis. I come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I've been living in Sarajevo for the last years. So I've been involved with the Frank Youth Network activities since 2015. And it's a great pleasure to be with you today. And the reason my question goes to Ms. Katz is because your story is the third survivor story I've heard about. First one was in Berlin 5 years ago. Second one was in Sarajevo 4 years ago, and now I hear your stories. And each and every survivor, I ask the same question. Bearing in mind, also considering your identity and the situation you and your family were in, and considering the fact that the world somehow is constantly taking a step back rather than a step forward. And with the rising narratives of populism, fascism, and nationalism, once again, are you worried that the history could repeat itself? And do you think that our mission and our stories are strong enough to prevent the history from repeating?
That's a question.
Use the microphone.
I must agree that I am afraid, because it is very vivid nowadays. It's growing, it's increasing, all this hostility. And I have no solution, of course, but the only thing I always preach is do what you can do on your own little spot, your own square centimeter. Was it only for your own consciousness? But do what you can do, don't leave it. That's the only thing I can imagine to be strong enough and survive these days. And all this is growing around, because I see it, I read it, and I must say, not personally. I don't meet people who are rough to me, or no, not personally. In my environment, it's all safe. But yeah, I am in this world, and I get notice of all this. So I can only share my feelings with you, but I have no really answer, a real answer.
We have time for one last question. Yeah.
Wolfgang, I was born 12 years after 1945 in West Germany. And my question, it relates to what Mees said, that when she found out that in 1945, not everything was just better all of a sudden. Yeah, I had the same experience. So my question was to Lutz as a historian. The Allies, when they occupied Germany in 1945, of course, first thing they abolished the race laws, which were in place for the Nazis since 1935, September, but they didn't do anything about this Nazi version of the paragraph 175. Do we know why? I mean, because we can blame, I mean, when I found out growing up in Germany, it was still in Nazi version in 1969, I was shocked. Yeah, it's a scandal. But then I found out, well, of course, in 1945, right after the end of the war, of course, the race laws were, all of them, Nazi laws were abolished by the Allies.
Wolfgang, of course, the Allies didn't occupy Germany; they freed up Germany. But
Yeah, okay.
now it was a kind of. Please forgive me to correct it.
Yes, of course.
Why?
Yeah, but they had the power to change the laws.
Yes, but your question was whether I know if there had any discussion about this. No. As far as I know, there had been no discussion about this kind of law, because it was regarded in also some of the Allied countries as correct. There had been wrong behavior sexually, and this was probably regarded as an internal affair where they didn't want to meddling in it. It's also a fact that in 1957, so which means 12 years after the war, The highest court in Germany, the Bundesverfassungsgericht, decided after some of the first activists asked to rewrite and change this law, responded by saying, no, this was not wrongly done by the Nazis. It has been no Nazi specific. It's a German law and it's correct. So it was confirmed 12 years after the war. And this is an expression, like we discussed earlier, of the time, of the understanding of majorities at the time. If you Google witnesses ask on first TV footage, what do you think about homosexuals? There are some documentaries about this from the 50s and 60s. And with the greatest impression of why do you ask it, they said, of course, they are criminals. Of course, they are sick. And I remember that when we had the first demonstrations in Hamburg, small groups, not Gay Pride, not Christopher Street Day like we celebrate today in some parts of the world. I remember a little group of maybe 80 gays and lesbians. We had not all the other letters still in our consciousness, but definitely some of us were like this. Some of the people looking at us were shouting also angrily, what are these people? What do they want? And when they finally understood, they clearly said to us, shouted back and said, you go back where you come from the concentration camps. And this was when I was a young student of history in Hamburg. So we don't speak about 100 or 500 years ago. It's important not to forget. And I try to be very short because I saw your finger such a long time. Can we allow one last question? I think you had a finger up long time.
Hi, thank you. Ivana, originally from Slovakia, but based in Amsterdam. Thank you all for your very insightful contributions. I think we came a long way since 1945, but we still have a long way to go. I believe even in very liberal, free societies like the Netherlands. And I'm someone who's very solution-oriented, so I would like to ask all of you if there is one solution you would like to pitch, an idea or a wish of something you think can be done to bring about this more inclusive, equal society.
Okay, it's a nice ending. we didn't prepare this, huh?
About it, but because I'm an activist, I am testing and trying to hold back. So I will think about activism and about chanting during the street and yeah, I think we're to the goal, trying to just bring awareness, talk about it, share the stories, use your platforms, and just talk about it.
That you were missing the question was, what is the solution? What is the solution to all this trouble? But we get a minute to think about it. It's for me, not for everybody. It's the last round of this. Maybe you give that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have to answer from the artist's perspective. I think it's very important, like Amjad said, that we tell our stories, and yeah, we shouldn't assume things about people. So I think when you tell a story, you always keep it personal, and I call this kind of soft activism. Like, you don't tell people what to do, you just tell them your experiences, and then they can get their lesson from that, because it speaks for itself. So yeah, I think it's very important to keep an open mind, and that's kind of a cliche way to say it, but I think it's the same meaning. Just find yourself in other people and learn from that. It's not very practical, but yeah.
Means it is the most practical way. Because if you come with a finger, people will be tired easily and will reject you. And after listening again to you, I would appeal to the organizers if you could allow Mees one poem at the end. Really, I would appreciate very much. And my answer is actually the same like Rozette said earlier. Everybody can do something where you are personally able to do so. Don't try to copy others. Don't try to be a stranger to yourself. And this can be art, this can be sport, this can be whatever you are good in. And be honest, like Rozette also mentioned. There is no guarantee for anything. As a historian, I know we cannot predict the future. We don't know. Full of unexpected things and surprises. But to be honest with yourself means at least you don't lose your strengths to yourself. That was crucial in all my life. And I had periods where I got a lot of support, and when I had periods where I was mostly rejected. And you all here this evening can do that. I'm not special. Okay, the glass is half full, not half empty. You come now with the.
I don't know what I would add because I said it before. And as a matter of fact, what you said is so beautiful. And it seems to me that is opposite what I do, because I try to reach my audience, my young audience, and try to direct them a little bit, so that I shouldn't do.
I think it's not the opposite at all. I think it's part of the same way of trying, because you are also telling your story to younger people. So, yeah.
But I think I just stand behind you. Okay.
I think we stand next to each other.
Next to each other.
New coalition has been formed.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I only have one English poem. I don't know if I know it by head, but I'll try. It's about activism, and I wrote it when I was at a conference for young people from all over Europe. And it was such an inspiring atmosphere. And it was just this energy that we all wanted the best for the world. And we kind of agreed on what it was too, which is very special. So yeah, that's when I wrote this. There's something in the air. It smells of hope and faith and freedom, and it leaves you longing for more. Vibrant colors on cardboard signs invite us to keep our heads up high. They paint the streets red and blue and yellow, so we know that we are anything but alone. They will try to wipe us out, but we will take their cloths away and give them back lipstick stain. There's something in the wall, like a leak from some weak ship that we are only peeking into. We tear it open with our bare hands until some of us can climb through, the smallest ones, with the loudest voices. The sirens remain silent, don't mind the rising tides, but we can hear their calls from miles away. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? We want it now. There's something in my body. It fills my heart with power and my lungs are full of pride. Because I've tried to take a stand before. I've tried, but when there's no one on your side, it's so much easier to hide and wait for someone else to change. Until now. Because my side is full of people whose ideas are just like mine. Whose concerns I share completely, who I can see with eye to eye. So put your fingers in a fist and put that fist up high. Come on. Because the future will be ours and it's about damn time.
So the next evening at Goethe will be performance.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your answers and for this amazing discussion we have had together. Thank you to all the guests, also the online ones, for being here and for your very engaging questions. I want to thank also on behalf of all the volunteers, the Scientific Network team, and all our colleagues that helped us to make this event a success. And once again to the Goethe-Institut for letting us host this panel here. We are very grateful. Now I would like to ask for Daniel Enrique's help if they can give a little present to our guests for today. Did you come help us?
Wolfgang, do you still have a library in the Goethe-Institut with German books? Then, no, I'm just asking. No. I would like. Sorry, the cooperation doesn't work. I just wanted to offer to leave a copy for those who want to know more about projects in Good question. No problem.
Because we have the protocol program here in the when I hear what you just said, 1957, what people say, sometimes I think our generation works, we are wishful thinking that we also regard it as liberation in 25. Unfortunately, when I hear things like that, I think National Socialism has destroyed so much. Yeah, and I think you said that the person is in like you know. And of course, in the 1950s, you know, of course, we think about how people we you know, liberated when Aachen was liberated in September 1944.
We have another discussion another time. They are waiting for us.
They watching up and reading young things. The majority, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. We're not.
We'll downstairs have more time for more informal discussions, let's say. But for now, we want to discuss events. And also one thing that has been mentioned before, several times tonight, is the Younger team, our Dutch branch of the Internet Youth Network. And in our presence are two of our alumni, Mees and Amjad. And right now it's the new, we're calling for application for our Younger team, the edition 2023. And would you guys maybe like shortly say what it's about and what you learned, a participant of the Younger team?
Definitely. Actually, the youth network was the very first time for me to Dutch young people. And I was pretty nervous before I went there because I never seen young Dutch people before. I had this stereotype that they are direct and they are mean and I was not seen people again. But actually they proved me wrong. The people who were there, they proved me wrong and super open. It was a super safe space and safe environment for everyone. They will help you and will guide you to create your own project, to um, to create a better society and to create a better place and just work on your ideas. I really recommend this for every young person who wants to make change.
People leaving
Wow. I want my bicycle again.
for meeting who has mentioned that there is an exhibition related to perfume in the design of the and that's what there's going to be an exhibition related to so there, and thank you everyone for being here. And now we can join the downstairs for a little snacks and drinks, and we can have some more informal discussion about everything that we talked today. And you can also have more information about all the discussions with the House. Thank you also to the online audience, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Oh.